You Work For Me by Anonymous. Chapter 3. Conclusion. The streets of New York were littered with fragments of destroyed buildings and vehicles as Peter observed them from his vantage point. Collateral damage was a bitch. As Spider-Man, Peter always strived to minimise it to the best of his ability, but it wasn't always possible. Human lives were still the top priority, so he'd gladly trade someone's car for a life. And hope it was insured. Their latest battle was finished, all the enemies defeated, and the dust was settling. Scanning the surroundings, Peter listened to the comms absent-mindedly. "Yup, all clear. So guys, want to get some dinner?" The answer was a tremendous yes. Everyone had their own idea of what they should eat, and Peter smiled under his mask, listening to the bickering. "What about you, Spider-Man?" Captain America asked. Normally he'd gladly accept, but he already had plans with Aunt May. "I'm kind of busy. Maybe next time?" "Next time," Tony repeated, and it sounded like a promise. It was good, the way their relationship changed in the recent weeks as they got to know each other for real. No masks, no lies. And Peter might play it cool, but Iron Man was still his favourite Avenger, no doubt about it. Spending time with Tony felt familiar. It reminded him of evenings in his own apartment, doing homework with his uncle, watching movies, getting excited about how cool superheroes were. Just being happy. "How did your search go, Tony?" Hawkeye asked suddenly. "What search?" Wanda chimed in before the man in question could answer. "Tony got in his head that Spider-Man is working for him and decided to track him down." "Oh, yeah, there was something like that." "And I was right," Tony bragged, and Peter wanted to facepalm. Was there really a need to announce it so openly? They were in the company of the Avengers. There were literal spies around them. They didn't need more information about him. "Oh." Natasha's voice was mildly curious. The plot thickens. "Damn, Spidey, is that true?" Peter shook his head, even though nobody was even looking at him. "No off-topic questions." "But this is on topic?" Peter could almost hear Clint raising his eyebrow. "Is that time you walked into a glass door last week and smashed your nose on topic?" A gasp. "How the fuck do you know about that?" Being on good terms with Friday was a blessing. He wasn't about to share his sources and lose the advantage. Tony chose that moment to step in. "Stop pestering my employee if you don't want to get blasted." Disgruntled mumbling filled the comms. All right, I'll stop for now, jeez, but I'll circle back later." Peter sincerely hoped everyone would forget about it. Or not. Ugh, he didn't know. Being Tony's personal intern was fun. It was like all those conversations they used to have, but this time they actually did the stuff instead of just talking. And Peter was getting paid for it. What an amazing, amazing scam. The normal internship was already so good, and now he transcended. Find a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life, some people said. Peter felt that. He was allowed to do whatever he wanted, within reason. No blowing up the building was the main rule. Did that really have to be said? Like he would do that. Tony would probably forgive him if he did, though. He was a chill guy. But that wouldn't happen to begin with because he wasn't Tony. When Tony was free, they invented together or worked on their own projects. They talked and listened to music and ate unholy amounts of takeout. Well, Peter ate most of it because of his metabolism, but Tony watched and joked that he was like a black hole for food. When Tony was busy, Peter could still work in his lab, but he sometimes liked to go down, check out what his old co-workers were doing, and help them out if possible. They were currently working on upgrading Peter's web shooters. No more dumpster-quality do-it-yourself mosaic of scavenged parts that fit together well, thank you very much. And no, they weren't bad at all, Tony, just budget-friendly. The old toys were about to go on their deserved retirement and give place to new and shiny ones, courtesy of Iron Man himself. It took Peter some time to give up any pretense and stop deflecting or calling Tony Sir. unless it was for sarcastic purposes. But now that he did, he still had some questions he wasn't sure how to ask. Upgrading his gear was a good excuse to bring it up, not to mention brand new web shooters. Who would say no to that? Hello? I don't know how you've been managing with those. Didn't they ever get stuck? The worst part was that Peter couldn't even deny it, as much as he wanted to defend them. They didn't deserve this treatment after serving him well and protecting the city for multiple years. Well, if they did, I would just fix them. And what if they did while you were swinging around, genius? Or fighting? That's why I have two. Duh. Tony shook his head in exasperation, and Peter didn't want to wait any longer for the perfect segue. Best rip the band-aid off quickly before the thought distracted him too much. So, how'd you figure it out? Looking up from the workbench, Tony smirked. About your identity? No, about my grocery list. Yes, about my identity. You're curious, aren't you? Get to the point, old man. Peter put his elbows on the table and his chin on his hands, staring Tony down. You'll die before you finish the story, and no one will ever know the truth. Rude, Tony commented without an ounce of heat in his voice. As we both know, my criteria were incorrect. Yes, I'm talking about your age. I checked the profiles, eliminated people, investigated them in any possible way I could, came up with nothing, changed my criteria and started all over again. Still nothing. Started again, and so on. Very annoying and time-consuming, might I tell you. Peter smiled like the epitome of innocence and kindness. Glad to hear that. I'm sure you are, you gremlin. Anyway, I decided that the situation needed a more direct approach. I talked to people. Thought you'd slip up or I'd recognise you. Which didn't happen, Peter interrupted. Kind of did. No, it really didn't. You let it go. You had no idea. I didn't have proof, Tony stressed, turning a screw in his fingers, which I acquired later. Peter pursed his lips. All right, but why? Maybe if you didn't interrupt me all the time, you'd know, you little bug. I'm not a bug, Peter immediately denied. I'm a feature. Tony just stared straight at him without a word, but none were needed. His point got proven in a fraction of a second. Sighing, Peter made a show of zipping his mouth, locking it with an imaginary key and throwing it over his shoulder. That's better. Where was I? Oh yeah, my trips to the lower levels weren't as helpful as I had hoped, and there were so many people. The man sighed, pausing his work on the web shooters as he recalled the events. So I changed my approach again, decided to track you down based on something specific to Spider-Man, and I remembered that one suspicious comment you've made about Oscorp. So I cross-checked all of our employees and any type of connection to Oscorp, no matter how small it was. Even though Peter already knew where this was going, he couldn't stop the glare from appearing on his face. A field trip, really? This was such bullshit. You didn't exactly admit it, but Oscorp is known for questionable research, and I had a feeling they had something to do with your powers. Tony continued, picking up the tools again. So I checked everything before the first appearance of Spider-Man. I saw your profile appear. Wasn't the only one, but something clicked, even though I didn't want to believe it. A 14-year-old fighting crime on the streets of New York in colourful pyjamas. It's a respectable suit. I had a budget. No talking. You threw the key out. Peter rolled his eyes. Anyway, I had this feeling about the nerdy t-shirt boy. I followed it. Everything fit like a glove. The end of the story. Thanks. I hate it. To be reduced to a mere nerdy t-shirt boy, that was the real tragedy. Especially considering the fact that he was wearing his I make terrible science puns, but only periodically t-shirt today. No need to be dramatic. Peter just gave him a look. Says you. Don't do anything I would do, Tony replied solemnly. After a moment, he added, or anything I wouldn't do. Peter went silent. I think you should stop giving people life advice if that's the only thing you have to say. Their silly argument was ended by the sound of Friday speaking. Boss, Miss Romanov is asking for permission to enter the lab. The world stopped. And Peter's heart too. It was like the record scratch sound effect. Should he run? Hide? Play dead? There was no time to think. Ready to meet her, kid? Tony asked, like his intern wasn't having a crisis right before his eyes. Wait, Peter choked out. You're not going to tell her, right? His mentor barely shrugged, watching him like he was a live comedy show or something. If I know, then she probably knows too. That did nothing to console Peter. It actually did the exact opposite. If she knows, it's because you bragged about it to every Avenger around for no reason. Peter hissed like a cat sprayed with water. Tony chuckled and turned his attention back to the project at hand, but positioned himself just so he could easily watch both the door and Peter if he chose to look up. Let her in, Friday. Let's see what she wants. It was at this moment that Peter realised his original web shooters were right there on the table, so he quickly swiped them and chucked them into the nearest drawer. The new ones were still a work in progress, not in their final form, so he let them be, hoping that Natasha didn't have the expert knowledge in unconventional inventions. Speaking of Natasha, Peter's enhanced hearing could hear every perfectly balanced step and every calm beat of Black Widow's heart before she even came into view. She walked like a ghost, and yet was so striking in appearance with her bright red hair and extraordinary beauty. Something about her screamed danger, and forced Peter to always be on his guard. Sure, they were allies, but that could change any day. He had his secrets and she had hers, not that he would ever ask her about them. He liked his head attached to his body. Or maybe he was being too harsh and she was a marshmallow inside. What's up? Tony asked casually. She lifted her hand, showing a thoroughly demolished weapon? Probably a weapon. Can you fix it for me? Sure, Tony replied, pointing towards the workbench. Just put it on the table, we'll take care of it and I'll let you know when it's ready. We? She repeated, now looking directly at Peter. Oh yeah, that's my intern. Very talented, so don't worry, he won't ruin anything. It'd be a challenge to ruin it any harder, to be honest. Not that I'd turn down a challenge like that. If Tony was actually a good boss, he'd tell Natasha to stop staring at Peter like a predator staring at their prey. Peter's heart was about to give out. Okay, fuck it. He was going to greet her. Hello, Miss Romanov, it's nice to meet you, ma'am. For a few terrifying seconds, she didn't speak. The silence was suffocating. And then... Hello, Mr. Parker. Fuck. Are you keeping an eye on my employees? Tony asked, eyebrows raised in mild amusement. It's a recent promotion. I found it interesting. She commented with a nonchalant shrug, and with every word Peter felt more and more fucked. She totally knew. Every cell in his body wanted to jump out the window from the very top of the tower. Well, is there anything else? Tony prodded, a clear suggestion to leave more than a genuine question. That's all, she replied and threw another glance at Peter. I look forward to meeting you again. And then she turned around and left. As soon as she was out the door, Peter groaned and hid his face in his arms, trying to become one with the surface of the table. Come on, it wasn't that bad, Tony consoled him. Peter only groaned louder and more dramatically. Told you she'd know. That doesn't make it better. Best get used to the feeling. I doubt that's the end of it. Knowing Parker luck, it definitely wasn't. Peter burrowed his head deeper into his arms, whole body buzzing with strange anticipation. Maybe he was actually going crazy because, as terrible as it was, a part of him couldn't wait. Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure you check out the description and go support the author. Have a lovely rest of your day.